recording this. So anyway, so we're going to talk about preparing the test. And one of the things is once you find this challenge and you are being able to have victory, that feeling of exhilaration is wonderful. I know when I used to take tests and I used to come out of them and knew I was prepared and ready to take the test, I'd be like, oh, that was easy. But it took me a long time to get there. So don't think that this is an easy method, that it's going to come to you just like that and preparing for the test. But when I did and I was prepared, it felt so much better when I left a test. So let me go back to our file and let's talk about. So I'm going to talk about the study that happened, and I think it's really interesting how students felt. So this Dr. Perry did this study, and it was a Harvard study, and he put 1,500 freshmen, and he gave them an assignment to read a chapter, and it was 30 pages from a history book. They were all given 20 minutes to read the test, and at the end of the 20 minutes, he would ask them to identify important details in that essay in the chapter. What he found out was the class scored well as long as it was multiple choice test. And you have to think about that. You have 1 in 33% chance, 25% chance of being able to answer the right question. A lot of times you can take one of them out without any problem because it's usually an answer that's so odd that you wouldn't answer it anyway, dropping it down to, you have more of a chance of getting the answer right. Only 15 out of that 1,500 were able to write an essay on it, giving details. So that's only 15 out of 1,500. That's not a big percentage. So, so no one thought to read the chapter summary or skim over anything that was in the margins or flagged or anything. So that's how we're going to teach you how to prepare. And if you came to my reading and taking notes, you know that reading the margins in the textbook is one of the ways you can get the important information that you need out of what you're reading. So go on. And what they found out is, they found that it was called obedience purposelessness. And what they found was that they talked to the students, and students were thinking, well, it's cheating if you pre-read the information. So if you're trying to read a chapter before you go to class, before you even have a class, students were saying it's cheating. And so that's not really the case. It's not cheating to look ahead. So the students had to come up with a conventional safe passage to be able to know that this relationship of pressure and conventional rituals of safe passages to the next grade. I mean, that's how they ended up realizing that the students thought that this was purely cheating. And that's not true. That's not true. I always say to my students, pre-read, always pre-read. So how can we fix this? How can we fix what we don't know what is wrong? And a lot of students don't understand why they can't take tests. So we're going to understand how do we fix it. So there's a lot of information. So for someone who has learning issues, it's really an issue of breaking down that information somewhere in the steps. So it's almost like a short circuit in the nervous system. And that's where these learning difficulties come in. The other thing is learning to recall the information. So if we don't get it from the short-term memory into the long-term memory, it becomes an overwhelming task. because we think we're studying it, but we're not moving it to long term. And there's a lot of reasons. There's interference, there's decay, there's encoding is another one. So if we don't understand that there's a problem going from that short term to the long term, and we can't get that information to stay in there, it's going to be really hard for us. So somebody with those are going to be able to express that on a test by not doing well. So we're going to talk about some of these. So has anybody ever been in where they've, and I hear this comments a lot, is why do I have to take this subject? I don't understand. I'm never going to use math the rest of my life, so why am I having to take math? Or they're really finding problems with abstract concepts, and so they don't really understand how we go from real concrete things like 2 times 2 is 4 to real abstract when it comes to subjects like algebra. And so these are some of the things that we're going to find. So the most important thing to do is take care of these steps before you do anything. So you're going to need to take care of your primary needs. You need to attend the class. You need to prepare and review the information and then learn the mnemonic devices. And we're going to talk about all these. We're going to talk about the fact that you need a notebook, what's really important in this class, what's that important information you have to be able to pull, being able to find a friend with this class. And I can tell you, I have other workshops that are going to cover these. So here are the primary needs, and these are really important. The reason I'm saying that these primary needs is people just look at them in one aspect. So we need to take care of all the physiological needs, and those are those primary needs: safety, belonging, esteem, until we get to self-actualization. And I'm going to talk about them a little bit more in detail. And that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we need food, water, and air, shelter, and sleep. Need to be able to escape from pain, and the biggest thing, escaping from pain, that is, even if you are in a relationship and you break up, that's still painful. So you got to understand that's going to be very painful. The death of someone, possibly broken arms, legs, things like that are really going to make it hard for you to be able to concentrate in your class. So we're going to talk again. One of the most important things is do not study and take a test if you're hungry. If you take a test while you're hungry, your biological needs are going to be thinking about food. So we want to make sure that that's really an important part of it. Don't take a food that's high in sugar, because if you take that sugar, you're going to go to a super high and drop down into a really low. Do not eat a heavy meal. You're going to want to go to sleep afterwards. Remember, our brain needs water and air. The brain can't function if it's dehydrated, and the heart needs to be able to pump that information up to the brain. So make sure that you're also hydrated throughout the time. Again, shelter and safety is going to help you through this. One of the things too is to make sure you get enough sleep. That's so important when you get into, when you're attending your class. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, because if you don't have the sleep, the body cannot regenerate and be able to take information and then send it back out to your test. So sleep's really important. Another thing, whether you're online or you're face-to-face, you need to attend that class. You just can't take the information without the teacher saying these are the important parts. Being engaged in that class is, you have to be engaged, because you're not going to take in any information if you're not engaged in listening to what they have to say. Again, we're talking about attending class and being an active participant. if the teacher is there and you are having a face-to-face class or a hybrid class, make sure you actively participate. If you need to ask a question, ask the question. There's a student in here in that class that needs to know. So that's a really important question. Questions, what if there's no ability to participate in the class because it's an online class? One of the things is I would engage in using the Learning Lab here to engage with someone. You could ask those questions. They have SIs. And if you want to, I mean, you can write your teacher, send them an email, but if not, make sure you're engaging with someone either in your class or in that Learning Lab, or send a message to me so that I can say, okay, let's just talk about what you don't understand, because I know I've been in class and I've had to hand my syllabus to someone else. I got a 25-page syllabus and I was like, oh boy, I became to rely on that syllabus because it told me every step in every paper I wrote in my senior research paper. So, it may be looking overwhelming, but in the reality, when you finally do see it, you're going to see that those syllabus, when they're extensive, there's a reason why. That took me because I was like, oh my gosh, 25-page syllabus, this is crazy or what? So that's really important. Does anybody have any questions right now?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
What if you're in a class that you're not interested in? That's my problem. I can't concentrate on it because I'm not interested in it.
Okay. So what kind of class is it?
Biology.
Is it biology? Okay. I would come in, honestly, I would go in and work with someone in the Learning Lab. I've watched those tutors in there and they make it exciting, and that's something I'm finding is really important, is that they're making that stuff that's really boring. And believe me, I didn't want to take biology when I went into college. I left it for my very last subject, and then I ended up tutoring biology, which I never thought I would do. So go in and see them. They make it very exciting. They're very interactive. I know they do have SIs, so you don't have to come onto campus. Are you on campus?
No, ma'am.
So is there any chance you might be able to make it on campus to be able to do something like that? I know they do have SIs.
Not right now. Do they have any virtual tutors?
I think they have SIs, so I don't know exactly which class you're taking. But afterwards, if you stay on, I'll help you try to find out if they have a virtual tutor for that.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So again, that's the important things. Be participant in that class. If not, get somebody who can really help you through that. Plan to work ahead of time in case something unexpected happened, and that happens because we came into a pandemic and didn't expect us to go online. We have hurricanes, so we were out of classes for a long time. So, be prepared just in case something happens. One of the ways it's important to be able to study is you need to read and work in 20-minute intervals. I say half an hour because 5 minutes should be review. 20 minutes should be able to sit and read intensely, and then a 5-minute break. The reason why you're taking these breaks is because your brain can't take in any more information than 20 minutes. It doesn't care after a while. So you want to take that break, refresh, go back over the stuff you just read, and then move on to the next session in that 5-minute review. After 60 minutes, stop, review again, and do it up for 2 hours, as long as your chapter is I mean, if it's not going to be 2 hours, you don't have to keep reviewing the same subject over and over again for 2 hours. So, do it for the 60 minutes and get used to it and move yourself up further and further in the subject. So, we're going to talk about how to read a textbook. So read your textbook. It's, you paid a lot of money for them, so you probably should use them. And again, read your chapter ahead of time before class. It's not cheating. Reread the chapter after class. So you can go to class, when you're doing your online class, read ahead of time, go to your class, and then review afterwards. That way, you can take in all this information. If you have time, you can send a note to your teacher saying, I don't really understand this. Can you go over this in the next class? So take those notes down if you don't understand them. Take notes off to the side as you're reading your chapter. It will help you be able to pass your test. Again, rewrite your information from your textbook. That doesn't mean rewrite the textbook. Excuse me. I've had students who I read their notes and they have rewrote the whole chapter. Don't do that. Take out the important information, the stuff to the side. Look for the boldface. Those are the words that are really going to help you through this. Know the meaning of each one of these words, because if you don't know what the meaning is, you're going to read it and you're going to go like, I have no idea. And if you don't know it, you're not going to be able to comprehend what's actually in that class. One of the things I found was really important is explaining it to someone else. I went back in to biology. I'd been out of school for 25 years before I went back in. I had no clue on all the parts of the cell, and I didn't remember. And so when, I had to build a cell with my son to reinforce everything that I needed to know for my class. Explaining it to somebody teaches yourself all about it. Again, if you don't have the answers by reading that book, make sure that in the next class or, take an email and write it to your student and say, I don't understand this. Can you go over this? Is there somewhere I can find information? Can you send me a link to help me understand this better? They're more than willing to do it. You just have to ask. That's the most important thing, is ask. I mean, all they're going to do is say no if they don't really want to do it. So, again, the rewriting it, the information will help you repeat that information. And when you repeat the information, it's going to help you in recalling the information. But repeating it is also rehearsing it. And if you think about all the rehearsing that people do to get up on the stage, they have rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal. The reason why is they need to recall their lines. So that's exactly what you're doing in your subject, is recalling the information that was given to you ahead of time. So those repetition puts it into short-term memory. Practicing moves it into the long-term memory. And memory and learning are closely related. So again, use those textbooks to refer to your material in your notes. I think it's important that when you're doing your daily review, you do those 20-minute intervals, 5 minutes to review, just take them in half an hour, get a chance to write them on flashcards. I would say take at least 1 hour per subject each day, covering the lecture notes and the reading. That's on the weekly, to make sure that that's embedded into your head. And at the major reviews, when you're reviewing for exam, you want to do 2 to 3 hours at a stretch, reviewing that different information through your notes, through your book, through your lectures, review it, and do major studying that last week. One of the things I think is really important, if your teacher is giving you notes, review them within the first 24 hours of that class. If you have questions again, you're going to go to your instructor, you're going to go to their office hours, you're going to ask if you can have a virtual meeting with them. Take whatever you can to be able to approach that instructor and say, do you have time that you can talk to me about this? They have office hours, so they are available. So ask the question. This isn't going to, like I said, this isn't going to help you. This is going to help other people in the class. So make sure you ask those questions, because I'm telling you, there's other students sitting there asking the same questions. I know I was one of those students that I would hope that somebody would ask a question so that I could get the information. One of the ways to remember is using mnemonics. Now, everybody remembers how we go through the kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, and species. Well, we remembered it through mnemonics. King Phillips came over for great spaghetti. Again, using chunking information, you're going to take and you're going to separate small pieces of information so that you can remember the whole thing. That's how they did the telephone. There's a thing called Magic 7, and I think I talk about this in a little bit. The average person can learn 7 pieces of information and keep it in their head to get it to the long-term memory and be able to recall it. So, that's why they chunked phone numbers down into 7, and they put an area code in front of it so that we could remember those numbers. Association. The frontal lobe is in the front of the head. I mean, it says right there, front. There's a thing called mapping, which you can take and make a story. I'm not good at this one. I admit to it. I'm good at mnemonics. I'm good at chunking. Association. I'm not good with mapping. That's where you take a full story and you put it in to a story. And some people may be really good at that, and that's great. Where you put it in little bubbles and you take it around and make a full story of it. Color coding each subject. I think if you're going to do flashcards, I would color code those cards, and I will show you at the very end when I'm talking about those color coding of information. And then take that will help you with the flashcards. If you take that information, it'll help you with those flashcards. Look at some pictures. Those pictures are worth 1,000 words. And then use the models. They have models in that learning lab. And if you see it, touch it, feel, you'll be able to hear it or understand it. So this is a way to remember mnemonics with psychology. I thought I would give an example so each person can see how to remember and compare the major personality theories through psychology. Here are the comparisons. There is psychoanalysis, psychodynamics, humanistic trait, and social cognitive. Now, how do you remember those things? I'm going to show you. I'm going to take first 5 major personality theories, and we're going to say, here they are, and we're going to look at their letters, and we're going to put a name or word with each one of these. So I put it as Paul has to study. Paul has psych to study. Picking out the first letters of this to be able to remember those 5 major parts of the personality theory. Again, here we go. Here is another one that we use mnemonics for. And everybody should remember Roy G. Bibb, colors of the rainbow, order of operation for math. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So these are all examples of mnemonics, how we remember that information and how do we take it in and keep it. Again, these are all just different methods that I'm showing you that are important to be able to use mnemonics. What you're doing is trying to look at this big picture and be able to put that puzzle together. And once you do that, that information, even though you have small pieces of information, it's going to be able to pull the whole picture together. And you can see with this puzzle, we can see it's a heart, but it has individual pieces through it. And it'll all fit once you remember how to do it. Again, this is where we're talking about chunking and taking 7 pieces of information. So we can either use it through, taking acronyms and putting it down to REM for rapid eye movement, CFCC, know exactly what that means, Cape Fear Community College. Chunking that information, you can see we're chunking it down to lower amounts of information so that we can move it into our long-term memory. Memorizing is really important. This is one of the tasks that students can do, and you can see there's a large amount of information. Can anyone remember how to do this and take all that information in and be able to tell me what's in that whole amount of, car keys, ribbon? Is there a way to be able to do that? Anybody have any ideas how we want to do that? How we want to take that information and pull it down so that we can remember and chunk it into smaller pieces? Anybody have any ideas? Anybody see any similarities? So maybe we want to take it down to anything that's on top of my desk. Paper clip, a pencil, a pair of scissors, a ballpoint pen, a calculator. Those are all going to be on my desk. So I'm going to think, okay, I'm going to put those in the first set of memorizing those things. And you're going to find that with biology, you're going to have to remember parts of a body in detail. So you're going to have to put them into separate pieces to remember them. So here's an example of one of those. You've got it down. Car keys. These are things you're going to see in your car. This you could see, going into a dollar store or, some other place. Flashcards are exactly what you're going to use in school, and these are going to be on your desk. So putting it into some meaningful manner is going to help you. Again, you can do 6 S's, 6 P's, 5 C's, whatever it takes to remember it. It just has to be in a method you're going to remember it. I do a lot of this. I need to put and say, oh, there's 6 of these, 6 of these, 5 of those, 3 of these, 2 of these. This is my method, but that's not everybody's method. So I'm not saying stick to that or use that. It's just my method, and it's easiest for me to remember it that way. Again, we're going to talk about association. Temporal is near the temples. Parietal, I just remember Cry Rock and how the, Lion King came over the top, and so, and I remember occipital as, I know that my mom used to say she has the eyes in the back of her head, and so I would always remember that that's where the information comes from, in the back of my head, so I remember occipital. Here's mapping. We talked about mapping. These are the different ways when you're doing an essay, introduction paragraph, pulling a hook, thesis statement. Each sentence has to start with the topic sentence. Then there's the body of the paragraph. We're going to support those ideas. We're going to close the statement, and eventually we're going to come to a conclusion in our paper. So we're going to write a paragraph on the conclusion, and transitioning comes into that closes statement to be able to say, okay, we're going to close this statement, we're going to transition into the next paragraph. When you're taking a test, Never, ever, ever leave a question blank. You still have 25%. Even if you don't know the answer, just take your chances, mark it down, put something down, anything. Even if it's wrong, put it down. It's not going to be taken away. I mean, you may take your chances and put down something. It could be right. So I say to everybody, mark every answers. You have 1/4 of a chance of getting the right answer, so just put it down. Look at similar questions on the test. You might be able to pull the information out of that. This is, I can tell you from experience, if you hear the teacher say, this will be on the test, if you hear your teacher say, this is important, if your teacher highlights something, if they repeat it, I guarantee you it'll be on the test. I can tell you from my own experience, I would say to my students, this is really important. I would highlight it up on the board, I would repeat it, and I would say to them, it's going to be on the test. And you know what? 50% of the students got it wrong, even though I told them it was going to be on the test. So I never could understand it. It wasn't a trick. Nobody's trying to trick you. But I was really shocked that even when I said, this will be on the test, that still anyone got it wrong. A little bit of surprise, but it happens. So one of the things I want to have you know is we have a good old survival kit here, which I think is something everybody needs. And I'm going to tell you about it right here. So some of the things that are really important is that you have a notebook. There's a notebook. No matter which way you have it, this is a notebook. Write it down. It's a guide for your class. Use index cards, and you can see we have different subjects here. Biology, history, and psych. Use those color-coded cards so that you're not like searching for your cards and knowing, oh, well, it could be on a yellow card, could be on a red card. Keep to the same subject. Really important things for you to do to have these note cards and be able to separate the information. Always, always, and you can see I have lots of them. And if you can't keep them separated, use a book like this to take and put that little bit of information. One thing I'm going to tell you about flashcards, don't rewrite the whole question that you're seeing written. Put it in your own words. Most important to put it in your own words, because if you don't understand it and you read it, wrote to me, and I ask you it and I turn it around backwards, it's going to say, and I say to you, what does this mean? And you can't tell me, then it tells me you're not putting that information in the way you should do it. So take your first card, and I've got an example right here. I think you can see here that here's the question. It's a question on antisocial personality disorder. This is it. But if I can't turn it around and ask you this way, and you be able to tell me this way what it is, you're not learning the information. You need to be able to do it both ways, not only like this and turn it around like this, but to go like this and turn back around. So make sure that you understand that information. I have other people that do other methods. I need to keep mine separate. You can see in here, here's a card, and for the student to answer the question, I think it's a lot of information. I would have put this one on one side and this information on the other side. But this is the way some people learn. I need it separated personally, but you know, everybody learns in their own fashions. So when you're taking a test, you know, we also, I think it's really important to have Post-it notes when you're doing your textbook. Each one of these texts, each one of these posts is saying, this is an important piece of information. I really need to know it. If you're not going to take notes, put it in your textbook. and say, really important information, let me get back to it. If I don't understand it, post it on it next to it and say, I don't understand, I'll ask my teacher in class. Other things you need is those pencils and papers, especially if you're in class. I would write in pencil in case you're sitting there and you wrote down wrong information. You might want to have a pencil and be able to get through that. So we have a bunch of different notes here, different Post-it notes. Another thing you need is highlighters. Now, I like yellow. I like everything in yellow. There's a lot of people who do yellow and pink and blue for each subject. I can only do yellow. I only pick out the words that are super important. I am working with a student right now who is going over the Constitution. There's 19 pages, but I need to know it so that I can help her. So I am sitting down and I'm highlighting information, and she needs to know the Declaration. So we talked about those things, and you can see I'm already highlighting that information to say, okay, let's talk about this. This is another set of information, another way to hold your index card, again, separating all the different subjects down here. If you're taking a test, make sure you have all this. Now, one of the things when you are taking your test, if you really can't stay awake, make sure you have coffee. Important to keep you awake. These are just some of the things I think that are so important that each student should have. I think, again, if you're writing down wrong information, you want to make sure that you have some sort of eraser that's going to help you, because you want to make sure that information's correct when you're writing it down. So if your teacher says something and then all of a sudden you look back and you read in your book, but you've taken them in your notes, make sure you go back and correct it so that you're not studying misinformation. Those are really important things. Again, here's what I've said to you. Make sure you eat something with protein in it. I think these bars are good because they're high in protein. It holds your information in your head. If your protein synthesis helps heal the body, we need protein to help heal that body. So make sure you get something that's protein-based, not sugar-based. Before you take a test, if you are really having trouble and you're having a lot of headaches during the class, make sure you take aspirins with you or some sort of Advil or something. So make sure those are all in place for you when you're taking your tests. We'll talk about anxiety next week and what it feels like to go through the anxiety and how to get over the anxiety. If there's anything that you want to do, again, is use your textbook. Use those highlighting parts. If you don't know how to highlight in your textbook, if it's online, ask someone how do you do that so that you can go back and refresh that information that's highlighted. Is there any questions that anyone has, or any suggestions, or anything that you want to add to the presentation? So there's a question of studying and forgetting content, especially when there are timers in front of you. That is really hard. What if your online class does not have interaction? We talked about that. But one thing about studying the content, it would help if you can change that information into your own information. Making an appointment with me, I can show you how to do that. It's really hard to be able to generally pick some information and say, okay, how do I understand this? I would make an appointment. I would have you make an appointment with me. We can break it down to understandable information that will help. Again, there's a tutoring center, but if you really need to know how to break down that information to remember it, um, that's what I do, and I can help you through that. So that's really, I think that would be the best way to do it first and get used to how you need to do it for each subject. Anybody else have any other questions? Having it timed will really put you into anxiety. I think that's really hard. I think I can tell you that I also do insurance, and I took a test, and it was really hard for me to get through. It was a 2-hour test. You have to score 90, and at the end, I went to make sure that every answer was filled in and that I didn't miss anything. And I lost my test off to the side. It took me over an hour and a half to do that test. I had like 24 minutes left. I had to find the test. It came back without any answers. And yeah, I was in super anxiety. So I know exactly what you feel when you have that. If the student who asked about the test and saying they have only 5 minutes left, if they can contact me, I'll tell you how to get over that and what to do. I have a few questions to ask you. So is there any other questions that I can help anybody with and tell you about how to help you through the test taking strategies in real detail? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to, if you have any questions, you can contact me at rlhoffman143@mail.cfcc.edu, or you can email me. You can call me on my work phone, which is 362-7460, and you can ask me some questions. Or you can come to another workshop and ask me questions, or if you can make it to the workshops, there's some really good information. This is an overall guide of how to prepare for the test. Make sure you have enough sleep. Make sure that you have something to eat going in the test. Is there any hours? I usually work between 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. I can guarantee you that pretty much I will be in those hours, and you can call me anytime to ask me questions. My Thursdays are pretty full. If you leave a voicemail with me, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And, again, go over your stuff, review it. The more you review it, the more you're going to keep it in your head. That is the most important thing to do. Is you just can't read it one day and think 6 days later you're going to have it still there. You have to review every day to maintain that information, and reviewing it is going to keep you alert of how the beginning information goes on and connects with the end of the information. Tried reading your beginning of your book, what the chapter's about, and make sure you read that summary. Those are two of the most important pieces of your textbook. Make sure you read all the highlight letters, boldface, anything that's on the sides. Those are the most important things to read in your textbook. If you have any questions, please call me or email me. I'm available to answer any of those questions and help you through learning how to not be so anxious about taking a test, and how you can prepare for those tests more in detail. Anybody else have any other questions? And if not, I'll try to wrap this up for you so that you can go about your business. Anybody else have any other questions? Anybody afraid to ask any questions? Because I want to make sure that you're willing to ask questions, because it's really important you ask your teachers, instructors, professors, whoever they are, those questions. Again, I think one of the most other thing, important thing is to know is you can't get in any trouble for asking questions. So be willing to ask those questions. You may get a no, but still, it's still important that you at least ask. If you get a no, then you got to go find someone else. I used to ask a teacher. I struggled with one part in biology, and I asked my teacher over and over and over again, and he couldn't explain it to me. I went to another teacher. He explained it to me, and I said, well, that was way simpler than what he was explaining. So if you can't get the information, make sure you turn to somebody else and get help, because sometimes they can explain it better to you. All right, I'm going to wrap this up for everybody. I hope everybody has a great day. You have any questions, again, email me, text me. My name is Rosemary Hoffman. I work in the library. My room is L215. I am right behind the circulation desk. If you need to stop in and see me, stop by. I'm here. Okay? Hope everybody has a great day, and I hope to see you at the next workshop. Okay? You're welcome.
Was that Yvette that was asked about the biology class?
Hold on, could you wait for a second till I stop the recording? Thank you.